Okay, hello to everyone. I would propose to start. I hope that everyone hears me well. If not, please chat this information. Thank you all for joining us today. Also, thanks to all our speakers, today's speakers, for finding time to join us with speeches. I think now we have more than 60 participants of the webinar, but I think there would be some more participants joining us a little bit later. Just a few words about the organizational moments for today and about our company. Today, I will be hosting this webinar. My name is Evgen Kuzin, and I represent a Ukrainian company, Fruit Inform. We are engaged into the fruit and vegetable market analysis and have the special focus on the Eastern European fruit and vegetable markets. We'll start from my presentation, and I will speak more about the current blueberry market situation in Ukraine, in Belarus, and in Russia. And also I will present the results of the market study of this blueberry market in the Eastern Europe. And this study was recently conducted by our company. Then we will have a speaker from Poland, Mr. Adam Paradowski from a company Plant Press. He will tell us more about the Polish blueberry industry, about the current situation in Poland, and about what is expected in Poland in the next 5 years. Then we'll switch over to Ukraine. We will have a speaker, Mr. Taras Bashtannik. He represents a company, a Ukrainian berry, and he is one of the leading growers and exporters of berries in Ukraine, especially blueberries. Then we'll switch over to some technological elements of the blueberry industry. We will have a speech by Mr. Oleg Bosy. He is a managing partner at the company Frutek. Frutek is a licensed blueberry and other berry plant nursery here in Ukraine. And Oleg will present his view on the recent technological developments in the Ukrainian blueberry business and his view of technological developments that are expected in the next 5 years. And at the end, we will move to like a global perspective of the blueberry business, and we will have a presentation by Mr. Andriy Yarmak from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Andriy will tell us more about the global trends in the blueberry business, about current trends, and about what he expects from the global business in the next 5 years. And at the end, we will have a few minutes for final questions. But if you have any question, you can write it on chat, and we'll try to give a few minutes after each speech for answers. So let's start from my presentation. Just a moment. Just a few words about our company. So as I've said, my name is Evgen Kuzin, and I represent a company that is located in Ukraine named Fruit Inform. We are located, our headquarters are in Ukraine, but we've been analyzing the whole market in the Eastern Europe, or in almost any countries, like Poland, like Belarus, Russia, Central Asia, and some smaller countries like Moldova and Georgia. We've been engaged into the market analysis of the fruit and vegetable industry for more than 17 years, since the year 2003. And as I said, our focus is mainly on the Eastern Europe. As of today, we, as market analysts, believe that there is a considerable lack of real market information about the blueberry industry here in Ukraine, and especially about the blueberry industry in Belarus and Russia. For example, investors that are seeking for like market niches in these countries, they say us about really considerable lack of trusted information. In addition, for example, such information can be interesting for those who buy blueberries from Ukraine, or for those who supply inputs and equipment and other technological elements to the three countries of the Eastern Europe. Based on this information and on this expectation, our company has decided to conduct the analytical study of the blueberry industry here in the Eastern Europe, and to set like a 5-year outlook of most expected developments that are expected in Ukraine, in Belarus, and in Russia. And such a study is already conducted and available for order on our website. And I would say that all participants of this webinar can be granted with an additional 10% discount for this study. And so a few words about the study. To conduct it, we decided to receive the most up-to-date information directly from all participants of the blueberry supply chain in the three countries, in Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. We surveyed plant nurseries, we surveyed traders, we surveyed wholesale companies, but what is more important, we have made the survey of growers in these three countries. And the areas of surveyed growers covered about 53% of total areas under blueberries in Ukraine. In Russia, the share of such growers was 83%, and we also managed to cover by our survey about 46% of total areas under commercial production of blueberries in Belarus. Each grower was questioned with a very wide and deep questionnaire. So we asked them about their areas, about their varieties, about their technological elements, about their production plans, production costs, about labor force, certification plans, sales channels, export channels, and their general plans for the next 5 years. Also, this study has like a set of historical data and historical analysis of areas, production, imports, exports of blueberries in the three countries, and of course for prices, both for imported and domestic blueberries. Also in the study, we provide our 5-year outlook for areas and price trends expected by the year 2025 in Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. And also the study contains like a set of more practical information like blueberry production maps, like database of all statistical data, contact details, and for Ukraine, we have the examples of business plans for blueberry growing projects based on cases of Ukraine. And today I'm going to present you some results, some findings, some insights from this analytical study that we have just conducted. So let's try to answer two main questions of both the analytical study and this webinar. Why blueberries and why Eastern Europe? So blueberries are the most rapidly developing fresh produce categories in the Eastern Europe, and they are the most expensive among other berry crops in the both in Ukraine and Belarus and Russia. So for example, in the middle of July this year, prices of blueberries in Ukraine were 2.5 times as high as for other most expensive berries, like raspberries or blackberries. In Belarus, blueberry prices were twice as high as raspberry ones. And in Russia, blueberries were 2.6 times as expensive as strawberries. Ukraine is now one of the global leaders in blueberry area expansion. And over the past decade, Ukraine has increased areas under blueberry cultivation by 13 times. And since 2017, areas under blueberries in Ukraine were averagely growing by 43% per year. Belarus indeed has a long history of blueberry cultivation and is the main re-export platform for also for blueberries that are for blueberries from banned countries in the Russian market. And indeed, Belarus can be considered as a pioneer in blueberry growing in the post-Soviet Union region, as the first commercial plantation of blueberry production was established in Belarus in early 2000s, while Belarusian scientists had started studying the blueberry and the blueberry crop in early 1980s. So Belarus has its own scientific basis of blueberry cultivation, and products of Belarusian nurseries are rather popular both in Belarus and also in Russia. Russia itself has been actively increasing blueberry imports and recently started its own growing projects. But of course, areas in Russia are not so large like in Belarus or Ukraine. So just 5 years ago, Russia ranked the 23rd largest importer of all vaccinium berries, but mainly blueberries in the world. But now, in 2019, Russia is already the 12th largest buyer of these berries. And since 2015, Russia has increased imports of fresh blueberries fivefold, and at the same rate as Poland, it increased over the same period. And of course, blueberry consumption has been rapidly growing and constantly growing all around the world. And total global imports of all vaccinium berries, mainly blueberries, they have totaled more than $4 billion in 2019. And over the past 5 years, global imports of blueberries have doubled. So, and let's move more to the Eastern Europe. So let's speak about areas in Eastern Europe. If we speak about 3 countries of the study, Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, Ukraine accounts for 71% of total areas under blueberries in Eastern Europe, and Belarus, commercial production in Belarus accounts for 20%. Russia accounts for 2%, and the rest one is in non-commercial or backyard or non-professional production in Belarus. And this fact is very important, as it will be shown further, as this share reflects a large share of low-quality berries available in Belarus in the peak of the domestic season, which puts serious pressure on prices in the Belarusian market and puts serious pressure on sales of professional growers. But if we add Poland to the area comparison, the situation is quite different. And it is Poland to lead in areas under blueberries in the Eastern Europe, with a share of 71% in total areas, while Ukraine covers only 20%. And the rest one is in Belarus, both commercial and non-commercial, and in Russia. And altogether, these 4 countries cover more than 15.5 thousand hectares under blueberry plantations in the Eastern Europe. So what about varietal structure of blueberry cultivation in the 3 countries? The situation in Belarus and in Russia is rather similar, and in both countries, growers prefer middle season varieties. But if you look on Ukraine, the situation is quite different, as Ukrainian growers put their focus both on middle season varieties and on early varieties. And that's because Ukrainian growers have already enjoyed the growing popularity of early blueberries from domestic consumers uh, who prefer domestic in-season blueberries in June. For example, this year in June, the first greenhouse domestic blueberries in Ukraine were successfully sold at prices twice as high as imported ones. But the main variety in the three countries is early variety Duke, and we believe that growers from Russia and Belarus, but especially Russia, will be focusing more on early varieties thanks to higher prices of those blueberries available in the market. And let's speak more about technology, about technological provision of blueberry growers. The figures on the slide will be like abstractive indexes that are based on the results of grower survey, but they will enable us to compare the situation between sectors and between the three countries of the study. So at first, let's look on the provision of field machinery. We can see that the situation in Ukraine with the provision of field machinery for blueberry growing is quite better than in Belarus and Russia. And in fact, that more than a third of Ukrainian growers, of surveyed Ukrainian growers, said of no problems with their provision of field machinery, while such share of such growers in Belarus and Russia was just 25%. Situation with sorting provision. The situation with sorting is quite similar in the three countries, but again, in Ukraine, the situation is better. But nevertheless, 82% of Ukrainian growers still fully rely on manual sorting of their blueberries. And as we can see further, the sorting provision, the provision of sorting technology in Ukraine has the lowest level among other parameters. And we believe that investments in mechanized sorting technology will be one of the most active in Ukraine in the next 5 years. Although let's see the situation with cooling. And again, the situation in Ukraine is much better than in Belarus and Russia. As, for example, for Russia, about a half of surveyed growers of blueberries in Russia had almost zero cooling capacity. And they preferred to sell their blueberries directly after harvesting without cooling them. And in Belarus, only a quarter, 25% of surveyed growers were fully satisfied with their cooling capacity. And the last one is packaging. And again, the situation in Ukraine is better than in other two countries. And the situation with packaging in Ukraine was quite better than with other technological elements. And almost no grower from Ukraine said of problems with the access to packaging this year. But this does not mean that Ukrainian growers, there would be no investments in packaging at all. We believe that in the next 5 years, there would be higher interest in more ecological packaging in Ukraine, like cardboard packaging for blueberries. So as seen from the slide, the best technological provision in the blueberry business now among the three countries is in Ukraine now, and the highest need for technologies is now in Belarus. But in Belarus, everything will depend on the political and economic situation. And the situation now in Russia with technologies is a little better than Belarus, but everything could change with rapid expansion of areas, which is expected in Russia in the next years. So, and let's move to blueberry prices. Let's compare blueberry prices in early August 2020 with the previous year's prices. So for Ukraine, we can see that on the year-on-year basis, blueberry prices in Ukraine have grown by about 37%, which was connected with very bad weather conditions in Ukraine this spring. As despite rapid blueberry expansion areas in Ukraine, blueberry production in Ukraine this year totaled just a half of those volumes that were expected this May. And the main reason is spring frosts. So prices went up considerably, and we believe that in the next 5 years, the main investments in Ukraine will be in protection technologies. So in those technologies that could protect Ukrainian growers from frosts, from hail, and of course greenhouse technologies. As the share of greenhouse production in Ukraine, of greenhouse production of blueberries in Ukraine is very small now, and it does not even reach 1% of total areas. The same situation was in Poland, but prices in Poland have already reached their like minimum due to rapidly expanding areas in the last few years. And Belarus had the same frosts as in Ukraine and Poland, but prices went down in Belarus by about 15% compared with the year before. And the main problem in Belarus was quality of offered blueberries and lack of regular sales channels, especially export sales channels, because Belarus is now in exports fully focused on the Russian market. And prices in Russia also went down. But the reason was not in growing production of domestic berries in Russia, but in growing imports. As imports of blueberries to Russia in July 2020 were record high and were twice as high as in the same month of the previous year. And the main suppliers of blueberries to Russia in July were Serbia and Georgia. And let's look also on Georgia, but I think Andriy will tell us more about Georgian blueberry industry. And prices in Georgia also went down, and we should not forget about this country, as this country also is rapidly expanding its blueberry production and rapidly expanding its exports, both to Russia and to some other countries like the Middle East. A few moments for each country as conclusions. So what we can expect in the next 5 years in Ukraine? Of course, there would be further area expansion in Ukraine, as about 50% of surveyed growers in Ukraine planned to increase their areas by the year 2025, especially medium-sized growers and small growers. But large growers, they do not plan to expand areas too significantly. There would be a further development of domestic market in Ukraine, and as of today, we can already say of a kind of commodization of blueberries, and Ukrainian consumers got used to blueberries in summer, and they are getting used to blueberries off season. There would be new export directions. For example, already last year, there were some exports of blueberries from Ukraine by plane to the United Arab Emirates and to Singapore. And we believe that these export directions will be expanding, will be developing very rapidly in the next 5 years. And probably Ukraine will target Scandinavian market with its blueberries. As I said, there would be active investments in protected growing in Ukraine, in greenhouse production, in anti-hail and anti-frost systems. And prices generally are expected to go down, but everything will depend on the balance between area expansion and export development. For Belarus, as I said, uh, the main factor in the Belarusian market will be political and economic situation. If everything is okay, then there would be some changes in varietal structure of blueberry production, especially there would be some more focus on early varieties. There, of course, would be further area expansion in Belarus and investments in cooling and other necessary technologies. And Russia will remain the main export market. If things are not going well in Belarus, then there nevertheless be area expansion, but at much lower rates. As for example, the lowest blueberry area expansion rates in Ukraine were observed in catastrophic for our country in catastrophic years of 2014, 2015, when areas were increasing only by 15% per annum. If things are not going well in Belarus, there would also be some price problems due to low quality of blueberries during the peak of the season. And Russia will nevertheless remain the main export market for Belarusian exporters of blueberries. And for Russia, in Russia, we expect a very rapid area expansion. The rates would be much more rapid than in Ukraine and Belarus. And we also expect the entrance of large agri-holdings and large agricultural companies into blueberry production with huge investments. Although there are some risks of fast development of low technology production, especially of growers that cover, for example, 1 or 2 hectares. And the situation could be like in Belarus during the peak of the season. But despite very rapidly growing areas in Russia, imports will still remain the main factor in the market, and imports will keep on growing. As regards main suppliers, Peru will still continue to press out chili from the Russian market during off-season blueberry season. And also the most one of the most significant suppliers would remain Morocco and Serbia. There would be a newcomer, Georgia, with high-quality blueberries during June and July. And everything will also depend on the control on the borders with Belarus, as Belarus before 2019 was the main re-exporter of European blueberries to the Russian market of Europe, from the European Union and also from Ukraine. And thank you for your attention. Just a moment. Yeah, I'm back. Thank you for your attention. As I said, the study is already available. The blueberry market in Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. And please feel free to contact us on any questions concerning the webinar and concerning the study. And now I would like to invite Mr. Adam Paradowski from Poland, from company Plant Press. He will give us his view on the Polish blueberry industry and what he expects from Poland in the next 5 years.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation and hosting my presentation. Unfortunately, I cannot show you such a beautiful slides, but you need to see my face and listen my 10 or 15 minutes speech. I would say in case of the blueberry, till now, by many years, Poland has been seen as mainly top apple producers, but now on, the blueberry is first of all example of successful implementation of the completely new, unknown 30, 40 years ago crop to the Polish farms. and also good example of the successful activity to reach markets, to keep one of the leading position even in the world. If you look at today's situation at the blueberry production in Poland, compare, for example, from 2004, the harvest yield in the crop in Poland was around 4,000 tons, when, for example, in 2018, it is almost 26,000 tons. So you can see how by 15 years, how big jump we did in case of the production. In case of acreage, official statistic data are about 11,000 hectares, but if you talk to growers, if you talk to the Growers Association, some researchers are even thinking that it will be something around 14,000 hectares. So anyhow, we are right now, after Spain, number 2 in case of the blueberry production, and looking into whole European production, it's something about 24, 25 total European production. If we look at the blueberry, it's only the fresh market, and in the past, the blueberry was so expensive, so I would say elite products, that many Polish consumers do not know blueberry, or even do not buy blueberry, at least in the big amounts, simply because of availability in the shops, but also the price. In the same time, Polish blueberry been sent to several countries, especially to UK, and we became one of the leaders of the suppliers of blueberry to the British consumers. It's very easy to understand why, because if you look at the European map, probably Andriy later on explained this better than me, that in general, I need to look at the data, but the consumption in Europe, it's something about 160,000 tons, while, for example, United States is almost 500,000. So it means that the average European consumer is consumed per year only 200 grams of blueberry per head. But if we look at the UK, this number is more than 4 times bigger. So we talk about 900 grams. And it means that there was some studies that the penetration of the market is even 45%. So it means that those people are consuming even more per head from those which are regularly buying a blueberry. This is why Poland, of course, when we reach visible amounts, we start export this crop to UK. And I would say choosing UK, it helps us not only that there is a big market, big potential, but also from the beginning it requires from the Polish growers or Polish companies which produce and send blueberry very high quality and safety standards. Because if you would like to be supplier of Asda or Sainsbury or Tesco, from the beginning, from the field, by your harvest, by your distribution point, by logistic, you need to be on the top of that. You probably know we don't talk about global gap, but we talk about BRC, all the standards which are also required by the supermarkets. It's not only regarding the quality packaging, but also labeling, but the same important is also safety profile of the product. So we don't, this product should be on the safe profile for the consumer, no residues, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, it helps a lot because from the beginning, we really supply to the, in case of supermarkets, very demanding market. So those companies which start doing this business, they're earning a good money, because I would say if you produce a good quality, you can get the very interesting prices. There was also supporting exchange ratio between British pounds and also Polish zloty. So at the end of the day, those companies, they also has big volumes in case of the own production. They step by step implement, new varieties. They also implement, irrigation, anti-frost systems. But also the next step was to have a very good and efficient, cooling systems directly from the field. If you harvest your crop in August with the high temperature, so it's very crucial to cool them down in the quick, very fast time. Second is also the grading lines for the blueberry. If you asked me 15 years ago, I know the grading lines for apples, but I said, what? Blueberry grading line? Now they are in common. It's not only the question of the precise of sorting, but also saving time by the manual sorting of those crops. And then quite important, as I said, is logistics. So you need to planning this quite well. You need to know your crop, and you need to also store, if you need, extend a little bit your season. If you look at the structure of I need to look at my notes, but if you look at the structure of Polish export, in 2012, we export about 2,000 tons. And in 2018, almost 7,000 tons, and almost 40% Poland sent to UK. The second market for Polish blueberry with 24% share, it's Germany, followed by Sweden, 8%. I talk about 2018. This is the data from the Polish Ministry of Finance, because we need to control the shipment outside of Poland. Number 4 is Denmark, then Netherlands, Italy. And as you can see, you need to also take under consideration, especially when we talk about the shipments from Ukraine, that we are not limited by the customs, etc., because of Great Britain is part of EU. Also, the shipment to Germany is very fast, very close. So it also supports Polish export. And I would say that Poland create a very good image, a very good brand, and it's big success of all the people involved into this industry, that they exchange with themselves the information, they trying to improve the quality and also trying to keep those homogeneous crop. So if you can buy, if you would like to buy the blueberry, for example, in August in the British supermarket, you can see that with the proud. When I visited UK, I could take the box with blueberry, and there was country of origin Poland, so it was very common at that time. Unfortunately, life is not always easy, and Poland is not the only country which would like to be present on those markets. We need to also take under consideration the climate and the localization of Polish farm, and depending from the weather, this season can be shorter or longer. So what we can see in UK market, because this is kind of the, I would say, benchmark for European export, I would say that you can see much more competition, both for the early season, those countries which can supply earlier, like for example Spain. But I would say the sales window for UK it became shorter, especially in the case of September, because you can see increasing number of supply from South Hemisphere, especially from in the past Chile, but now I think that Peru is one of the leading country. And this is big volumes comes to British supermarket. So we really need to think and to compete with, I would say, competition. Also, Ukraine is also supplying more and more to the export destination. So if we look at the plantations in Poland, as I said, there are many very modern, big farms with the whole infrastructure. As I saw from some data, about 50 60%, it's still blue crop, but also because of the situation with export, we really need to look for the new varieties where I was in the meeting of the Polish Berry Association, SPBA, and there was kind of debate about the future, and really the members, the producers, they underlined that they really need to invest into new varieties, which is already now in countries like, for example, Peru. So this is something which, of course, will happen. There are tests of new varieties, but still, as I said, half the Polish production is blue crop, which is it's good variety with good productivity, but the problem is that it's available almost at the same time. So you can see this famous peak of the season when the prices go down. We also don't know what will be the situation in case of export with Brexit, how it is influenced. This season, we do not see this as a big issue or big problem. And then how already from several years, Polish producers or Polish Producers Association are trying to find new markets, not only in Europe, but also in far destination. Probably you've seen Polish blueberry at Fruit Logistica Berlin, and also you heard about the shipment to the Asian countries, successful shipment, but of course we talk about shipping top quality of the blueberry. But we, of course, talking about the export, but we shouldn't forget about domestic market. And when I was a student 20-something years ago, I just testing blueberry because we have experimental plantations. But as I said, the blueberry was very expensive and not easy to buy, even there was a problem to find it. Now it's very common, and it's it's much more popular. And this is thanks not only due to the lower prices, but it's also to the very big activity done by the growers' organization. So it means that there is a very, how to say, well-prepared and well-done promotion plan. Many years those plan is implemented. So you can see a lot of events, mainstream media activities, using even celebrities to tell the people that blueberry is a very healthy, very nice, very good new fruit, and it's not it's really Polish, and we should to include those blueberry into our daily diet, and it's successful. The good example is 1st of July each year, which it's kind of a national celebration, opening of blueberry season. So you have several events, mainly in big cities, but it also in the social media, when you're choosing the child with the T-shirt with the blueberry, and he's tasting a first blueberry. And I think it's well done because it's creating the very good image of blueberry. I would say if you compare to the other crops, doesn't matter vegetables or fruits, you cannot find anything negative. Doesn't matter in the professional or mainstream media about blueberry. So blueberry as a fruit, as a crop, in eyes of the consumers are very positive. So we need to do everything what is possible to keep this opinion. I would say that the local consumption of blueberry, Poland is about 38 million, is also supported first by a better economical situation of Polish buyers, but also by development of the supermarkets. Because they would like to attract the people by extending the portfolio of available fruits. Most of them, they are even available year-round. And they would like to promote the crop like blueberry. So you can find first blueberry from Spain, and then starting Polish season, and then you can even buy the blueberry from South Hemisphere. And they try to do a lot of promotion, a lot of activity, I would say, to learn them that the blueberry is good, but also that those blueberry you can find in the, I would say, not low price, but reasonable price at our shelves. So I think the supermarkets investing into those crop, what can sound funny, but at the end of the day, you can imagine how much, how many thousands of tons of apples you need to salt compared to the blueberry to also generate the same margin for the supermarket, which is also added value. But it's also supported by the trend that the Polish consumer would like to find a new healthy fruits, and for sure blueberry is this crop. Regarding the production, you need also to take under consideration that it's speed up with the new plantations, not maybe as a big like in the past, after embargo, which was announced by the Russian Federation, because Polish apple growers, they lost big market and they look for the alternative. And they look from the beginning to the low prices of apples, a very low price of apples, and theoretically very high prices of blueberry, which is not only 0-1 solution, because many of them do not understood how big investments are behind the high prices of blueberry, how many tons you can harvest from 1 hectare compared to apples. But this is the trend which we see, and I think this trend will continue, that many apple growers, I don't say that replace 100% their orchards to blueberry plantation, but they try to have 1, 2, 3 hectares of blueberry first, because also they would like to keep pickers during the blueberry season, and then they can smoothly go to the harvesting of apples. Second is also the first money which they earn from the farms. The problem is that if you are producing 1, 2 hectares, you need to think, of course, about the good quality, about the production, etc. But you need to think at the beginning, at the starting of plantation, what will be your sales channel. And for many people, this is the problem. And also those, I would say, long present on the market, professional blueberry companies are a little skeptic because they are afraid that there will be big peak of availability of the blueberry and then decreasing the price by the moment. And just to shortly summarize my information about the Polish market, we really carefully monitoring the situation in Poland in case of the production, the consumption, and also situation abroad, because as I said, the blueberry is really focused on the export markets. We need also to take under consideration that blueberry needs a lot of spendings in case of the harvest, in case of the labor forces. And we are lucky because till now there was no as big problem to get the seasonal workers, but also because of coronavirus, but also because of the other situation. There is also the question marks, and the cost of the labor are dramatically increasing. What also will be very important for next coming 5 years, it's what kind of investment we Polish blueberry industry should to do. I would say there will be 3 roads of those investments. First investment is related to the weather condition, to the climate changes, starting from the protection against the spring frost. Then of course irrigation is must to have, but also all the net system or anti-rain roofs, etc., etc. But also there is a big discussion and discussion about that the changes of the climate will influence also on the new insects and how to control those insects, for example, like Drosophila suzuki, which coming from the south more to the north of Europe. The other way, when the people would like to think about the investments, it's also investment into the new varieties. If you would like to compete with export market, but also to keep the Polish consumers, we also need to invest into the new varieties, testing those varieties, how they will perform in the Polish conditions. And the last type of investment, I would say quite almost the same important like the new varieties and the new systems of the production, is investment into marketing and the promotion of the blueberries, both to the new markets, to the new destination. Because look at the European map, we talk about the big consumption UK, there is a big consumption in Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, or Switzerland. But there is much more countries on the map when people also can eat much more blueberries. And the same is about Poland, because Polish consumers can buy on the local markets much more blueberries, but we need to supply with them the good quality. And also we need not stop to push them for a healthy still of life with the blueberry. So, and of course, very careful calculation of the costs and the profits, and also, as I said, rational investments into all these three elements. So far, I think it's everything from my side. Thank you very much. I hope that I do not go too long.
Yes, thank you, Adam. Adam, there is a question in chat. Yes. Our participant asked you to repeat the Polish planted area and production levels, if it's possible.
If you look at the Polish Statistic Office, is about 11,000 hectares right now. But we're thinking that there will be even 20-25% more, with about 50 even to 60% with the blue crop as a main variety in Polish at the Polish plantations.
Yeah, thanks. And a short question from me. What is now the situation with organic blueberries in Poland? Is it a popular segment, and what are your expectations from organic berries?
In general, organic market is increasing, but in my opinion, it will be growing. The question is, because it's also required by our, people, the companies which buying this to abroad. In case of Poland, it's a trend, but the growers know how to do it. But the question is the prices of those organic blueberry for the consumers. There was an increasing trend by last 2-3 years for any single fruits. But now I don't know what will be the situation because of coronavirus, because it's also decreased the buying potential of, I think, buyers in all the Europe. And that's all. But in general, as I said at the beginning, if you look at the blueberry, they have a very, very good opinion as a safety, I would say, product. So there is no discussion about the residues, too many sprays, etc. So there is no topics such on about the blueberry and for all the production.
And there is again ask you to repeat production level of blueberries.
11,000 hectares.
So only area, okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Adam. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. And I would propose to move from Poland to Ukraine. I would like to welcome Taras Bashtannik from a company Ukrainian Berry. He will tell us more about the point of view of a Ukrainian grower on the blueberry industry and what he expects from the next 5 years in Ukraine. Taras, you're welcome.
Hi, thank you, Eugene. Hi, everyone. I try to divide my speech into 2 parts. The first one is like to summarize this season, because it seems to finish already, so we can summarize and make some closes. And the second part is some prediction for nearest 5 years. So if we briefly summarize the season, we could see that harvest production level in Ukraine this year is 35–40% lower if we compare it with previous one. It's due to opinion of most part of big growers. it's 35-40%. Second position that also connect with first one is average selling price on the local market. It's important. In the local Ukrainian market is about 25-30% higher if we compare it with the last season. The reason it's because a lower harvest, and so that's why the price is higher. And the second one reason of the higher price, it's for my personal opinion, that local consumption shows us to that it grows rapidly during last 2 seasons, 2019 and 2020. And next position for this season, that of course that the level and volumes of exporting of fresh blueberry to European countries it's lower than previous season, because honestly speaking, major part of export to European Union companies provides one big company, and they also lost a lot of berries and a lot of volumes this season because of bad weather conditions during the early spring, and that's why the total volume of export to European Union is lower than the previous one year, maybe 30-40%. Still, because we now it's the mid of September, so it's hard to insist on one concrete figure. Then also we can say that during the season, quite a big number of growers start to make trial parts of exporting to countries of East, Middle East, and Southeast Asia. Of course, this season it was quite difficult to manage it because of COVID and because of not very high level of working of airports, especially, for example, in Istanbul, because Ukrainian airports allows us to export not more than 1 metric ton per one load on the a plane. So if you want to export more per one time, you should do it via Istanbul airport, and the level of their service honestly was quite poor. I mean, that's very big volatile temperatures and during the transit period and so on. But it's trend, and I believe that it's also like close to the second part of my speech is that this trend we save it and try to extend our Ukrainian blueberry presentation on those above mentioned markets. Also, we could say that export to Belarus or to Russia via Belarus also this season 2 or 3 times lower than last season because of several reasons. It's quite important. First, I noticed a lot of times during the season in July and August that our local prices in Ukraine were on the level of Moscow prices, or even sometimes higher. It's first one. Second one, it's close to first. It's COVID and the consumption and prices and so on in Russia also shut down. Let's say because of COVID. Then third one is the competition with Belarus. Belarus, they planted quite a lot during last 3-4 years due to my information. I believe it's quite relative that Belarus has 3,200 or 3,300 hectares of blueberry all in all. Usually it's most small farmers or domestic households. However, it doesn't matter because all in all they have more than 3,000 hectares and it's a strong position. Also, they have very strong positions that they when they export or delivery to Russia small batches, 2-3 tons, not truck with 20, but 2-3 tons. They don't pay any duties, any taxes, and 5 hours driving, and you are from Minsk to Moscow. So logistic expenses and cross-boarding taxes and other things. We don't compete with them, and this Ukrainian producers should take into account that maybe if even we will have in future, nearest future or far future, good relations with Russia in case of trading, but Belarus is a big producer of blueberries. Their positions are very strong. They have now at the moment only one problem is it's packaging and all post-harvesting. All post-harvesting, I mean, pre-cooling or rapid cooling, storage, packaging, all these positions. However, it's only a question of time. Ukraine now only on the first step on this. The Belarusian zero step, we're on the first steps. However, we have a lot of steps to reach the level of, for example, let's say for South American countries in post-harvesting, because it's very, very important. So it's if you speak about this season, if you speak about the like a major conclusion of the season, and maybe the conclusion for next several seasons, is, I could say that Ukraine, as a producer of fresh blueberry, hasn't reached the balance between volumes, local consumption, and export yet, because we have some volumes, we have growing volumes, growing local consumption, and growing export. It's like our internal reasons, and we have some outside competition, but it's a second part. So I mean that why we have very high prices, because the volumes this season lower than previous, consumption higher than previous, and only these two reasons give us no possibilities for exporting, because for what we should do it, I mean, we like Ukrainian producers, if we have a quite high prices for this season. Of course, in long-term perspective, it maybe it's better to export with lower prices to some companies, for example, in European Union. But Ukraine, it's not. We don't ready this season and maybe several seasons in the future to become a strong player on the blueberry market in European Union because of all above mentioned, and also because of one tricky thing. Our maybe journalists or experts usually say that Ukraine, for example, produce, let's say, 5,000 tons of blueberry, 5, 7, 10, no, and this is the volume that we could export. No, we could export as producer about 35-40% of this volume, because, for example, we have one company have annual production 200 tons, let's say 200 or 300, now that. But we have early varieties, which we harvest with small amount, for example, late of June, later. So we can't collect a full truck or half truck in 2-3 days. It's impossible, and it doesn't matter. No reason, makes no sense to collect it 2 weeks. This is the same with light varieties, for example. So among 100% of your volumes, maybe 40%, maybe 50% if you have a very concentrated period or do not divide your field on the 4, 5, 6, or 7 varieties. If you have one variety, for example, or two, surely you can, in brief terms, lower the truck. However, so it's quite important to know and understand that Ukrainian producing volume, it's not the same as Ukrainian possibility of exporting. It's very important to understand. If you speak about like a prediction for nearest 5 years, I think that the major clue is to reach this balance between production, I mean growing production, growing consumption, and exporting. I think that in nearest 2-3 years, maybe, of course, a lot of big growers reach the industrial yields. I mean, what they're expecting for, and because we have quite a big number of quite big projects, 100 plus hectares, I mean, for example, is first. Also, local consumption provides to grow, I'm sure. And also, Ukrainian companies who are on the market at the moment and who will try in nearest years to export, they will teach from season to season how to work, how to guarantee quality, how to work with pesticides, how to pre-cool, how to store, how to export, all this post-harvesting, also growing moments. So it's we're on the first step of studying all this question. So and in this case, the predictions that also acreage will grow. Maybe some of my colleagues with the next speeches maybe make some prediction which acreage we have average growing from year to year. What I see, it's about 400-500 hectares per season per year of adding extra acreage at the moment. Also, I see that, for example, in the local market, that the total volume of berries also grow about 15-20% per season. If we speak about absence of weather force majeure on other conditions that could make a huge influence on the total production, as for example we have this season, because minus 40% is quite force majeure. Growing the volumes of export, of course, first of all, I believe to European Union countries, because it's the only one now for me big and stable channel of exporting, because Russia and Belarus, as I mentioned, not stable, and the Belarus is quite a huge competitor, will be, and now and will be also. And Asia or Middle East, it's not a huge channels because of logistics and because of level of consumption. So it's a premium market, but it's not about thousands of tons. Growing of local market, of course, it's also very big opportunity, especially if the prices will become slower. And about the prices, I think, but it's hard to predict that if everything is okay from year to year, the price should be lower 10-15% from year to year in years 5 years. But if it's everything just to some schedule, about the problems that Ukrainian blueberry producers could face with lower prices, of course. So business plans everyone could revise, and fight for labor, and it's global problem. This season in Ukraine it's not a problem because of COVID. However, it could be a big problem, as well as the problem of weather and lack of moisture or lack of rain, snow, and regular hails. So much changes. We see it. We see it during the last 5 years. It's for sure. And global competition, because, for example, I remember if you speak about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the world blueberry market was divided between, during the calendar year. For example, in February and March we have, in Europe we have Morocco, let's say, then we have Spain, then we have Poland, Netherlands, Germany. Then it was a very premium and with high prices gap between mid of September and mid of October, and then South of America. Now because of new varieties, because of new technologies, because of new countries and players and climatic zones, in the same time could face on some markets, for example, let's say in Malaysia, on the same shelf. I remember it was the blueberry from Portugal, Turkey, France, Peru, it was early August, and Poland. So 5 countries. It's not standard situation for the blueberry market 5 or 10 years ago. So if you summarize, it's not a bad prediction. It's normal prediction. That means that we as Ukrainian blueberry producers should work on efficiency, post-harvesting, and extend new markets, and everything should be okay, I'm sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Taras, for sharing your vision of the Ukrainian blueberry market developments. I've got a short question for you. As far as we know, you grow not only blueberries, but also some other berries. And how do you think in the next 5 years, will blueberry be the leading category for you? Or maybe some other berries will also be like important for your business? What are your plans for other berry crops?
Okay, thank you for the question. If you speak about a fresh market and our position on the map, for example, and our borders, the blueberry is the only one stable and predictable position for exporting, for example, in fresh conditions. It's for our region and for our countries. For sure, Ukraine could, for my opinion, could develop sweet cherry on the south or from south of Ukraine, and it's also very interesting position for exporting, especially to Middle East and Southeast Asia. It's if you speak about fresh. If you speak about frozen, it's opposite situation. That cultivated blueberry is not very interesting for the moment. Not very interesting for frozen because the price is twice lower if you compare it with fresh one. With raspberry situation, that 95% of raspberry we freeze and export as frozen goods because shelf life of grown in open field raspberry, it's quite risky, tricky, poor, and also plus borders and long and difficult logistic to European countries. It's honestly it's unreal to export as fresh. However, the premium price as well as in blueberry. So for us, major crop is fresh market. It's a blueberry in frozen raspberry.
Yeah, thanks, Taras. Thank you for joining us today. Yeah, and I would propose to move to more technological point of view. Mr. Oleg Bosy, managing partner of Fruitech Nursery. He will tell us more about the technological perspective of Ukrainian blueberry production and what he expects in the technological sphere of blueberry industry in the next 5 years. Oleg, you're welcome. Please turn on your microphone, please.
Thank you, Evgen. My name is Oleg Bosy, and with respect to technologies, I will speak mainly about Ukraine. And in particular, we'll cover genetics, intensification of technologies, existing technologies, production in protected environment, which is very important, and also it was mentioned already by previous speakers, and advanced in post-harvest handling. Well, starting with genetics. At this moment in Ukraine, the base of blueberry industry, rather old NHB varieties. So NHB means Northern High Bush. Such varieties are very suitable for harsh continental climate, and almost all such varieties were released last century, mainly in the US. Their positive and also negative characteristics are well known. They are very predictable and they are free to use, which is also very important. As for other soft fruits, but with, I would say, a bit delay, now we have moved from government-funded to privately funded breeding program. And we already have some promising varieties. And at this moment, there are just a few private breeding programs focused on northern high bush varieties types. But the market is very good, so we expect many more private breeding initiatives to come. Private approach and new breeding techniques will definitely bring new varieties on the market much faster. However, growers should be aware that most important and time-consuming part of the breeding, actual breeding, it's a variety trials. It will be partly delegated to them. So it is important to remember, as with any other product or service, for launching and private varieties, there is quite some marketing involved. So growers should be very, very careful to switch to something new and promising, let's say. Well, coming to intensive technologies and specialization. Well, growers are looking for something to increase yield per hectare, get plantation full production faster, get better quality, or cut labor cost. And following apple production, production technologies, Ukrainian growers of blueberries, they're becoming more and more interested and experimenting with high density planting, growth regulators, and also quite promising mechanical pruning, and also mechanical harvesting. In fact, at this moment in Ukraine, we do not use mechanical harvesting. Only one company, as far as I know, has machine, but not in use, because for hand harvested produce it's possible to get premium price, but acreage is increasing and the labor availability remains the main challenge. So most likely in the coming years, growers will harvest their crops by machines, especially in the mid-season when the prices are the lowest. Of course, fruits for premium markets shall be picked by hand, but there are already advanced robotic technologies and for picking strawberries or even, let's say, raspberries. So I think that to invent something for blueberries, it would be much easier. Also, with respect to processing industry, food processing industry, well, if we will harvest by machine, a substantial part of the crop will not be suitable for fresh market, but suitable for processing. And after sorting, will go just as a raw material for processing industry. Beside of it, we expect in Ukraine and maybe also some other Eastern European countries to large-scale projects with main focus to supply processing industry. With certain existing varieties, and maybe in the near future we can get some special exciting new varieties for processing. Cultivated blueberries will partly replace wild bilberries collected from the forest right now. Also, I would like to talk about a bit about organic technologies. And all such technologies in Ukraine is still challenging for the growers, but indeed demanded by the market. And in Ukraine, we have several successful organic projects, but currently speaking, they may be called successful just because of the market situation. So definitely organic growers will need to improve their efficiency to stay or remain competitive. With respect to production in protected environment, weather remains the main factor limiting yield and impacting quality of soft fruits, also produced in open field. This year is a good example, as Taras and also Yevgen already mentioned, that the price of blueberries in Ukraine increased by 1/3. And if we speak about the lowest price on the market at the end of July, I would say by 50%. And this is the outcome of spring frosts and the rainy season during blooming time. And to manage all the risks connected with harsh climate and challenging weather conditions, growers need to invest in plastic tunnels, protective covers, hail nets. Well, such investments per hectare is double or even triple if to compare just if we speak about just to plant 1 hectare open field. So for instance, hail nets will cost you double of that, at least. But besides efficient risk management, such development would ensure much better quality, longer shelf life, and it means bigger market, as well as more efficient integrated pest management. Well, coming to technologies of post-harvest handling and storage, I would say that currently in Ukraine, post-harvest handling is the main bottleneck to enter export markets. And that is why for the last couple of years, we have at least, which I know, 6 brand new sorting lines to be installed. Taking into account rather large investments needed, only big growers, large-scale growers can afford such investments. But in Ukraine, we already have one established growers cooperative where post-harvest handling facilities are shared by several growers, as well as several new initiatives, which I think in the next 1-2 years will come. And long-term storage in controlled atmosphere. So at this moment, according to the information we have, there is only one company which has controlled atmosphere storage. But it allows not only to preserve quality of the product, but also it's the way to extend sales season. Of course, in the long term, we expect sales season to be extended with expanding blueberries on the south of Ukraine, as well as new genetics, new varieties coming in. But you know, new varieties takes quite a long time to release and even longer time to trial. So growers and traders can utilize existing technologies to keep the produce for up to 2-3 months instead of taking the risk and planting dozens of hectares of something new and promising. So just to summarize, here in Ukraine, we are just at the very beginning, and the future looks very promising, exciting for blueberry industry in general. And what is very important, we do not need to invent a bicycle. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I would be glad to answer.
Thanks, Oleg. I have a question, a short question. In the previous years, the growers from Eastern Europe, they believed that there must be soil, and there was a belief that not so many regions in Ukraine were suitable for blueberry growing. What do you think about this, and is this now really a problem, or indeed blueberries can be grown successfully in almost any regions of Ukraine?
Well, you know, blueberries can be grown anywhere, even on Mars. The question is the investment, and well, if it is worth to try. So in Ukraine, we have, especially north and west of Ukraine, we have very good soils for blueberries, which is not really interesting for cereals, for instance, or for technical crops, because mainly it's sandy soils and soils with low fertility. And in fact, blueberries they do not need the fertile soils. More important, availability of good quality water, and more important is availability of good quality water region in the region next to the new. from suitable soils, and there are also good quality water to irrigate.
Yeah, thank you, Oleg. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for finding time to take part in the webinar. And I would propose to move from Ukraine to a global market for blueberries. And I would like to invite Mr. Andriy Yermak from FAO. He will present us his view of the next 5 years in the global blueberry industry and some maybe some insights, some interesting insights in the market. Andriy, you're welcome.
Hello, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the seminar as much as I do. And yes, thanks very much to Fruit Inform for organizing it. I was always very curious about the prospects of blueberry production in Belarus and in Russia and in some other countries that are not being mentioned when people are speaking about the global blueberry market. I think the reasons I will explain later. Today I will also speak about the Central Asia, the region that most people don't know about. Recently I did a podcast for Chris White of FruitNet, and if you Google it, they actually titled it Next Chile in Central Asia, and it was about Uzbekistan. So it's not so much about the world market that I'm gonna speak today, but about some interesting things happening in this particular region. I will start with the global market though, because it's very important, because it has an impact on overall blueberry production perspective, but also on the philosophy of investments. When people invest in blueberry production, they have something in mind. And I know a lot of mega projects in this region, and I'm a little bit scared that people will actually do them, because there are projects like 1,000 hectares, boom, immediately. And these projects are in countries, of course, like Russia. So anyway, looking at the global market, why blueberry is so popular, why blueberry is so important? Everybody among investors is looking at things that actually demonstrate good growth levels. And if you look at blueberries, there is no other crop or in the horticulture sector that could demonstrate a similar pace of growth, being already so big. I don't know if many of you realize, but blueberry is already half of the global apple market, and apple is one of the most common fruits in the world. So blueberries already represent 51% of this global apple trade, if you're talking about exports and imports of products. Also, as rightly mentioned by Adam, there is a huge potential for blueberry consumption in the European Union. The only concern I have about this is that a lot of companies, while making good money on blueberries, do not invest into blueberry promotion, and I think this is wrong. And this is specifically wrong in Europe. Why blueberry consumption in the US is so high? Because in the US, everybody who starts business, the first line of the business plan is marketing. How much do you invest in marketing? In Europe, it's quite different, and a lot of farmers and commercial growers and cooperatives, they don't really invest in marketing, and this is limiting the consumption. So with a little bit of effort, it could be much more. I'll give you a live example from Italy, where I'm based. We buy blueberries every week, and our kids love it. And when we took a box of blueberries, and they're very expensive in Italy, actually. And when we took a box of blueberries out on the playground for kids, all of the parents were looking very suspiciously at us, and they were like, "Okay, you shouldn't give this to our kids. We don't know what this is." You know, maybe it's some kind of a dangerous thing. And just 2 minutes ago, they were giving out candies and other like sweets to kids, but they were afraid of blueberries. So we had to explain that, okay, blueberries are actually healthy. They're good for you, and the kids and some of the parents are like, okay, fine, try. Kids try it, and they're like, yeah, it's good. They like it. So there is not enough effort in promoting blueberries in Europe, and this is limiting consumption in the European Union countries specifically. But I believe that blueberries have a huge potential. At the moment, blueberries are growing. If you take the 10-year period, the average increase in exports of blueberries is 17% per year. It's very difficult to find any crop that or any product in the horticultural sector that demonstrates that pace of increase. Also, if you look at the leaders of this market, and I wanted to speak briefly about the success story of Peru. 10 years ago, I don't know if you have time to guess how much blueberries were exported from Peru. 0. At that time, Chile was already a market leader, was already exporting more blueberries than any other countries in the world, and Chile was and Peru was doing 0. 5 years ago, Peru was exporting only was exporting 20 times less blueberries than Chile, and today Peru is exporting 48% more blueberries than Chile. So, and I mean, that's past year. Probably this year will be even bigger difference because Chile has been experiencing some issues with water. So what I'm trying to say is that you should not underestimate newcomers. You should not underestimate countries that are just starting up, because in 5 years' time in this market, they could be, you know, ahead of you. And that's why I'm going to speak about some markets that you usually don't hear about. And this is specifically, so let's start with Ukraine. There's been a lot of information from Ukraine already, but I think Ukraine is probably the most dynamically growing producer because it has a lot of areas with perfect conditions. Just for information of people who don't know Ukraine well, it has a land area that's equivalent to Germany and France combined, if you're talking about agricultural land. So there is, there is no land limitation. There is a lot of water, actually good quality water as well, and there are a lot of microzones. So you can extend the blueberry season without even growing it under cover, by just growing it in different regions. And as Oleg rightly pointed out, I personally don't understand why Ukraine is not expanding blueberry production in the south like crazy, because it's just a win-win situation. Also, many leading production zones of blueberries in Ukraine are 3 times closer to Holland or Germany than key production areas of Spain, for example. And this information was shared by Taras a couple of years ago, but for many people, even in Ukraine, it's still a surprise. So logistically, it's not such a big issue, and I disagree with Taras. We've discussed it many times. I think Ukraine could also export fresh raspberries to European Union without any problem. If such a project was developed specifically focused on fresh raspberry exports, because nothing stays on the way of Morocco exporting fresh raspberries to the European Union, and I'm sure Morocco is far further away from the consumption centers in Europe than Ukraine. So I think Ukraine has a lot of potential, but it's been very slow in realizing this potential, and export increase has been lowered in the recent years by the increase in domestic consumption, but also by weather issues that the whole Europe is experiencing. Speaking about Belarus, I think, well, we don't know what's going to happen in Belarus. At the moment, there is a problem. There are problems, but generally, if we put politics aside and if we assume that everything is going to be more or less stable in Belarus, this country also has a lot of potential for production of blueberries. Belarus, unlike Ukraine, doesn't have a huge selection of crops it can profitably produce. So for growers in Belarus, it's like one of the very few crops which can do very well in the conditions of Belarus. Actually, soils in Belarus in most areas are perfectly suitable for blueberry cultivation. So I think Belarus has a lot of potential. And speaking about Russia, Russia has mega projects. I know some investment funds that are gearing up to invest significant amount of money, and when significant amount of money for Ukrainian companies, it would be a crazy amount of money into production of blueberries in Russia. Also subsidize this production, although there are dry nations, difficulties in the area of economics and finance, government finance, but it's still, has perfect conditions, many areas where blueberries can be produced. And Russia, this year was the worst for Russian consumers on record for many years. The incomes declined, the exchange rate was going crazy, Russian ruble was devaluated. And despite that, and despite being locked up, because there was a quarantine that they didn't call quarantine though, Russia is increased imports of blueberries off season. I think 2 or 3 times. I don't remember exactly, but there was a huge increase in imports. Just imagine if there was no problem and if incomes were stable or growing, Russia could consume a lot of blueberries, and the popularity of blueberries is growing in Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and all of these countries. Now moving to the region of Central Asia. And I'm talking about Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, these countries, former Soviet Union republics. These countries have significant potential for blueberries, although local consumers have no idea about blueberries and local farmers don't know anything about growing blueberries. We've promoted it a bit, and it's changing very fast. Just to give you an example, in Uzbekistan, if you're wealthy and you have a wedding of your kids usually, it's a must to have fresh blueberries on your wedding table. It's like one thing that you should always have if you would like to demonstrate that you're a successful person, fresh blueberries. And I think it's a very good sign. And they pay $40 per kilo, sometimes $50 per kilo year-round for fresh blueberries in the retail of Uzbekistan. Of course, it's a remote country. It takes a lot of money to ship blueberries there, but there is nothing that prevents them from growing it there. I always compare Uzbekistan and some of these countries neighboring Uzbekistan with Chile, because it's also very remote. It has very interesting, very dry and very sunny climate. It has access to fresh water, good quality fresh water, not everywhere, but in most zones. And it's not using it very efficiently, let's say, because drip irrigation is just getting there. It's not everywhere. They're using flooding irrigation for most of their production. And I've already heard about some very large projects to grow blueberries in Uzbekistan. And this is like hundreds of hectares. People in Uzbekistan, investors in Uzbekistan, when they do something, they don't want to do 1 hectare, 2 hectare. They usually go like, okay, let's do 300, 400, 500 hectares. That's kind of the mentality there. Of course, they make a lot of mistakes. But generally speaking, Uzbekistan is one of the fastest growing exporters of fresh produce in the world already. It's already among top exporters of many items. And I think I'll give you one example about apples. They start harvesting early varieties of fresh apples at the end of April. So, I mean, they can get blueberries any time of the year, pretty much. Especially if we're talking about the southern areas of Uzbekistan, southern areas of Tajikistan. This is quite possible. So there is a lot of potential there. And of course, these countries can serve Russian market, but they're also well positioned to serve markets of India, China, and possibly Southeast Asia, because air transportation is developing also pretty well. Of course, volumes aren't huge when you ship by air, and unfortunately for these countries, they're landlocked, so container shipments is not an option there. But if things improve in Iran, for example, they could have a pretty good chance of tracking the containers down to the ports of Iran and shipping from them. Anyways, this is the region that's really got a lot of potential, and the one you should look at most definitely in your leisure time. If you have any questions about this region, we work there, we have people there, professionals. We would be happy to introduce you to these countries and also the key players in these countries. I've heard a lot of questions today, or I've seen a lot of questions about processing of blueberries. Of course, processing of blueberries is happening already in some countries, like in the US, where you have combined harvesting and a lot of optical sorting and stuff like this. I think mass processing of blueberries will probably make sense once the wholesale price or farm gate price of blueberries goes down to 2.5 euros per kilo. And of course, I mean, most people will say that it's not happening anytime soon. And I would agree that probably this level of price would be very hard to achieve very soon, unless Peru continues to plant 2,000 hectares per year. Then I think in Peru it's going to be a reality very soon. But generally speaking, I'm really betting a lot of hopes that the global market leaders of blueberry trade will put more money into promotion of blueberries. And I think this is inevitable, that if you want to expand the blueberry consumption, we have to also offer processed products. It happened to all of the key products, and it's going to happen with blueberries. And it's already, as I said, happening a bit in the US and some other countries. But in Ukraine, this year we received a lot of requests because China allowed Ukraine to export frozen blueberries, but not fresh blueberries for some reason. And of course, everybody was looking for frozen blueberries, but there is no frozen blueberries in Ukraine to export to China. So it didn't work. Speaking about further expansion of blueberries, it's not so rosy because if we expand production in Europe of blueberries, then something has to decrease. So and something is good, it has to be like from the fruit sector or from the snack sector. Are we going to beat snack people? I don't know. They're investing billions of dollars into advertising. I'm sure that blueberry traders will beat apple traders, because apple traders are not investing even as much as blueberry investors, because traders, because Apple is already a low margin business. But in terms of consumption, we will have to fight for our consumer. Looking at the perspectives, I'm looking at it more optimistically now with the COVID-19 pandemic, because I've actually looked at blueberries and different types of searches about blueberries over time at the statistics. And during the COVID, people were looking for blueberries, for vitamins, for things to boost your immunity, and this was very closely linked. So I think a lot of people were Googling things like, okay, how do I boost my immunity? What are the healthiest fruits? What are the healthiest berries? And I think blueberry came up very often, and this is helping blueberry consumption actually. But another good thing about blueberry is that, like apples, you can store them in your fridge for a week, for a few days. So this is also helping the blueberry consumption, and it's going to be the case for the next few years. This is why I think that the industry has several years to recoup and to prepare for a potential decline of the current price levels. And this is going to be hardest for developing countries. This is going to be hard for Ukraine because there is a very slow process of cooperation between growers, and consolidation of volumes, as Taras mentioned, is very important. If you want to ship a truck of blueberries, you need to have a truck of blueberries in one place of a similar or the same quality, let's say, that's fully traceable. I know that some people are already working on this kind of projects, but the next steps in a blueberry business will be rather difficult and will be impacting developing countries more than they're impacting developed countries. I also was asking the question that Oleg already answered about the potential of mechanic harvesting. I was asking this question of many people who are involved in the production and harvesting of blueberries and in the technologies. And I think most people agree that this mass-scale mechanic harvesting is not happening like within the next 5 years, which is good news for developing countries, and which is not good news for developed countries again, because again, with COVID pandemic, even Poland is experiencing problem with pickers. But countries like Spain or Portugal, for example, they'll have even more problems because they need to get more workers. So overall, this is very interesting. Watch out for newcomers. Watch out for countries which are developing the production very well. Oh, I forgot to mention Georgia. Georgia this year has exported 4 times as much blueberries as last year. Just in 1 year, 4 times. Of course, volume is not huge yet, but I think starting next season, maybe in 2 seasons, we're gonna talk about thousands of tons of exports of blueberries from a small country of Georgia. So there are countries that are small that you usually don't pay attention to, but they have their market niche because Georgia can supply blueberries after Spain, but before Ukraine and Poland. So in this window, they're feeling pretty well. They actually shipped blueberries for several years already to the United Arab Emirates, and there are several countries like this that are looking and finding niches in the blueberry production and exports. So thanks everyone. Be happy to answer questions. I see a lot of questions there, but I didn't read them yet, so I hope Zhenya will read them for me.
Sure. Thanks, Andrei, for interesting presentation, for your view of the global blueberry market. We have a couple of questions to you. The first one is, I think, from Peru. Our participants is wondering your opinion about China. Is it true that they will become the main global power in 5 years? So what is your opinion of China in the global fresh produce market, and especially in the blueberry segment?
I think China could become a major, producer and exporter even of blueberries, and there is nothing that stops China from doing anything, anything they want. They are a superpower. They have enough people. They have a problem with labor, actually, not with the with access to labor, but with the very high salaries they have to pay to get people back to rural areas and making them work. But I think that agricultural and fresh produce sector of China is undergoing major transformation, and it's happening faster than we expected. They are moving away from extensive production into intensive production, and yeah, they can afford it. So I think it's possible, but I cannot. I'm not in China, so I cannot really speak for China. But you know, there are a lot of surprises in China, and it's very hard to predict what is happening there. It still is a very regulated environment, business environment, and if the Communist Party of China or the government of China decided that blueberry would be a strategic crop, I mean, they could do pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another question from Peru. Our participant is asking, what's the main Peruvian blueberry producers' strength that helped Peru to beat their competitors from Chile?
Yeah, well, I think it would be better if they explained it, but well, as an outsider, and I've been to Chile several times, I've never been to Peru. So as an outsider, as an observer of the global market, I would say that Peru, as a newcomer, was just trying harder. Also, Peru has a wider market window, and they did a good job on getting big volume fast, and also learning from the experience of Chile, because in their case, logistics is everything. And while Chile spent billions of dollars probably promoting blueberry in North America, as a very affordable crop, Peru just jumped on it and made it even more affordable. And there is one thing that you should really remember. As market gets more saturated, specifically in North America, the focus is going to be moving towards quality. And there are a lot of issues when you're doing a big volume. And the quality, by quality, I mean how ripe the fruit is when it arrives to the consumer. And I've heard a lot of opinions in the US from the American consumers that, hey, blueberries are disappointing in the winter because they're hard, they're not mature, they're not ripe. So I think this is going to be a focus of any successful grower, to certify that the taste of these blueberries is going to be good. Also, this is a very important observation for growers in the developing countries, because they're mostly trying to use the cheapest possible seedlings, and then open license varieties. But people are already consumers are already looking for varieties that are tasty. So this is also a very important thing to consider for newcomers if people are considering investing in blueberry production.
Mm-hmm. Also a question from Frederick Vogel from the Netherlands. Hi, Andrei. Only thing what is not working in Uzbekistan is that they don't acknowledge or don't respect plant breeding rights. Can you say something about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, for them, this is a new thing, so they don't really understand what it is and how it works and why they have to pay royalties and stuff like this. And I'm not speaking about everybody in Uzbekistan. I'm just saying that it's very common to not understand this issue. And yes, it is a problem. But also, Uzbekistan is trying to be as transparent as possible, as open as possible, and I think there is that actually the present government of Uzbekistan is really taking image issue very seriously. So if you take this information, make it public, and if you you can actually make the government act and do something about it. So yeah, for Uzbekistan, it could be an issue, but they're learning very quickly. Like 10 years ago, maybe a little less, when I started working there, there were issues like, okay, we need to plant apples everywhere, and not understanding the basics of drip irrigation, of fertigation, of storage, and everything. They've gone a long way, and they made a huge progress in 10 years. They're now planting sweet cherries. They're looking into berry market. They're looking into freezing. They have the largest expansion of cold storage capacity of any country in Asia, I think. So Uzbekistan can learn quickly, and people in Uzbekistan are really hard workers, and they can learn, they can achieve things.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrei. Thank you for very interesting presentation, for sharing your view. We also have another question about mechanical harvesting of blueberries. It is very interesting for our participants. For example, the question of from Aziz Hakimov. Can you go in a little more depth in mechanic harvesting?
I think this is for Oleg, right?
Yeah, if Oleg can join us again.
Unmute, Oleg.
Okay, thanks, Andrei. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oleg, yeah, thanks for joining us again. We have a lot of participants are interested in mechanical harvesting. Can you say something, something more, some more?
Well, unfortunately, we can't share our experience as we do not have any. As I mentioned, in Ukraine, there is only one harvester of Litau brand, which was purchased by a Ukrainian company probably 5 or 6 years ago, but it is still not in use. In Ukraine, well, especially this year, we have enough labor and affordable labor, just due to COVID. So people are not able to move to Poland or Czech Republic or Italy, so they stay in Ukraine. So this year is exception, I would say. But I would expect mechanical harvesting to start in Poland first, probably in Spain, and maybe later in Ukraine, because here, at least for 2-3 years, we still can have affordable labor to harvest by hand. And I would say that for Ukraine, it would be one of the competitive advantage, that we are still able to harvest by hand when other countries cannot afford it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Oleg. And we also have like a hands up from David Maganya. I can turn him on. Just a moment. Okay, David, if you have, sorry, if you have any question, you can simply write it in chat. And I would again say thank you to all participants who managed to join us today. Thanks to all speakers for interesting presentations. And I would again repeat that the study conducted by Fruit Forum is already available. Please feel free to contact us on any questions if you have regarding the webinar and regarding the study. And I think today we will send my presentation to all participants of the webinar. And also the recording of the webinar will be available on our Facebook page. So thanks again. It was very interesting. We had about 95, 96 participants, and from a lot of countries. Thank you very much.